We are unwilling when we see something like that that puts us into that mental and psychological state of the Uncanny Valley to suspend belief.
Yeah.
The brain has a limit to how far you're willing to push it. And you know what? I don't know if we should be doing it, not from an ethics point of view, but from a storytelling point of view. If I'm able to make a human connection with a human, I think that I should be doing that instead of doing it through VFX.
Welcome to Cinema 5D on the Go. Moving conversations about moving images with filmmakers and industry leaders. Brought to you by Tilta, Blackmagic Design, Manfrotto, and Panasonic. In association with Sony. This is your host, Nino Leitner.
Do you see any tendency yet to really that actors will be replaced in VFX with, like, you know, artificial? Apart from like mass scenes and crowd replacement.
Look, that's a good question, right? We work on Rogue One, and Rogue One, obviously, Tarkin was brought back to life, right?
Yeah.
And I think that,
which I personally think didn't look really good.
Yeah, well, and I think that I can't speak for any
uncanny.
Yes, I can't speak for any visual effects artists, but I will say that certainly it peaked the Uncanny Valley effect in me, and I think that part of that is, I think there's two things to be said, right? One is that, like, there's a debate about, okay, if you've reached the Uncanny Valley, you really just need to go backwards and not make it as good.
Yeah.
And if you're able to dirty the look, which really is what it is, that it's too accurate, and once it becomes a little bit less accurate, a little more organic, you've already achieved what you need to achieve, right? You've overachieved by reaching the Uncanny Valley in some extent. The other debate is, do we really want to be doing this? You know what I mean? Like, at some point, if we as a VFX community can't achieve a completely realistic replacement, does it resonate with the audience? And I think, to your point, I gotta look at Tarkin. He didn't resonate with me because I was uncomfortable while I was watching him.
Yeah.
And if I'm uncomfortable while I'm watching him, I'm not listening to the story. And if I'm not listening to the story, like, the whole point of the movie is defeated, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all filmmakers and we're here to tell a story, right? And that's, like, sort of the beauty of the communities, that we all want to tell a story. I think that we are going to reach a place where we are able to do this. I think we're still 5 years out. I mean, I've seen some really impressive technology, and we're, because of the work that we do, we're privy to a lot of really, really interesting rendering stuff that, I would not be surprised if the technology already exists to do this work.
Yeah.
And certainly I've seen things that would lead me to believe that it is, we're a hair's width away from doing it right now. But at the same time, I think there's a question of, do we as cinematographers and artists, do we want to be doing it? You know what I mean? Like, do we want to be having to replicate someone like Paul Walker, who, his untimely death led to him not being able to be involved in a series of movies? And Carrie Fisher, I think Disney's made the choice not to involve Carrie Fisher, and they publicly announced that. And I think that it's a really interesting decision as storytellers to make, and I think that there's a debate, not about whether or not we can, but whether or not we should. And I think that I am on the fence right now myself about whether or not we should, and I'm leaning towards, I don't know if we should be doing it, not from an ethics point of view, but from a storytelling point of view. If I'm able to make a human connection with a human, I think that I should be doing that instead of doing it through VFX.
Well, honestly, I think Hollywood in general probably would do it more if it would end up looking more realistically. And I mean, it, like, as you said, like, it's almost too perfect. But with the example in Rogue One, it was like he was, I don't know, was it the movements? Was it the eyes?
My mind, it was the eyes and the face.
It was really
don't quite.
Exactly.
They don't quite.
It's very subtle movements, and I think humans are very used to looking at other humans all the time. So anything that's the same, for the same reason we talk about skin tones and skin tone reproduction a lot in cinematography and in color grading, and if it's only a slightly off, we will immediately recognize that. Yeah. And it's probably the same effect that happens when somebody is recreated like that.
Yeah. Well, it's a similar thing to what we face when we recreate environments, right? Is that, like, people are keenly aware of what the world around them looks like, right? And, like, whether or not they consciously know that or not, I don't know. But, like, when a person sees something that they recognize as an environment they're familiar with, let's use the Las Vegas Strip is a great example. We do a lot of driving environments that are the Las Vegas Strip. A lot of movies take place in Vegas or places that look like Vegas. people are keenly aware of what the Las Vegas Strip looks like because they are, both from pop culture, but from having been there themselves, or just being part of who we are, both in the U.S. but abroad. When you see something like that and the lighting doesn't quite match up, right away. Like, right away when it's poor green screen implementation. Right away when it's supposed to be the Las Vegas Strip, but it's the wrong color temperature. Or it's not, that's supposed to be the Luxor, but like the light that's coming out is red instead of blue. Like, weird things that like content's been manipulated to make something else different, but there's side effects. And I think that humans are extremely, extremely intuitive with that kind of stuff. And that's, the Uncanny Valley also takes place in some regards in this environment, in environment-scapes. It's not just in the human face, but I think that, we look at Tarkin, and to some extent I think that Leia's reproduction at the end of facial modification at the end of Rogue One was more successful, but it was still something where you looked at that and you're like, well, that's not what she looked like when I saw this the first time. And I think that's part of it, is that so many of us romanticize A New Hope, right? And we remember what Tarkin looked like, and we remember what Leia looked like, and when we see them and they don't exactly match up with our memories, we get really thrown off. And I think that's something that VFX is struggling with right now. And I think that a good example is people are really, really willing to accept King Kong in 3D, right? Because they've never seen King Kong, right? Like, there is no mental reference of what King Kong
unless you've seen a gorilla or
right,
something. Unless
you've seen a gorilla, but even then, like, there's this imaginative, it's sort of human, but like, we know that it's a mutated version of what the gorilla looks like, whereas Tarkin is a human being, right? And like, we are so, it to me has always been really interesting, because you go to the movies, right, to suspend belief, right? That's the whole idea, is you're suspending belief. You sit in the theater, whether or not it's film or a play or musical, and you're suspending belief for a minute, right? But we are unwilling, when we see something like that puts us into that mental and psychological state of the Uncanny Valley, to suspend belief. The brain has a limit to how far you're willing to push it. And I think that, like, unfortunately or fortunately, because I think it's all learning about how do we get better at what our art is, Tarkin was not exactly the best, I think, pushed us into a place where the brain was not willing to suspend belief anymore.
Well, especially if you see a character that is like, if you see a still frame, it's probably perfect. Except for the eyes maybe, but it's just like, it's like a photo. And then you see the movement and there's something off and you just can't say what it is. And I think the 3D artists can't say what it is, because otherwise, if they could have said it, they might have gotten it right. So.
Exactly. No, and it's like you said, it's subtle, right? It really is. It's these subtle, organic movements of the human face. And specifically, it's the corners of the mouth. It's the subscattering light on the cheeks and in the eyes. Like, 'cause human flesh, as it flexes, like, it changes thickness. I mean, when it changes thickness, light travels through it differently. And it's exploring that in rendering that is sort of that right now. It's honestly, that's the cutting edge of the technology, is subsurface scattering, and how does light transmission change through thin skin, stretching and contracting, and eyeball stretching and contracting, and that's really the cutting edge of the technology right now. And I think that we're still 5 years out, probably, from it becoming a commercially viable option, but we're only a few years out from seeing tech demos of this stuff being done. I mean, I've seen some tech demos of work that's been done on eyeballs, and man, it's unbelievable. I mean, just like the blood vessel work that's been done to create these networks of blood vessels in your eyes, you can't tell the difference between the human eye and a rendered eye. And that's, it's getting there. We're really getting there as a community, I think. And
so in general, where do you see your industry and your profession moving in the next 5-10 years? It's
my dream that what we're going to do is we are, instead of having to pre-render plates or having to go out and capture footage of this race in Italy, we're going to take the 3D model that's already been built by a company like Industrial Light Magic or Weta, and we're going to put it into a real-time rendering engine, and we're going to deliver that to our clients, and it doesn't need to be pre-rendered, and it can be completely modified on the day. And
so like a computer game, basically.
Like a computer game, exactly. And that, in my mind, that's where we're headed. I mean, we're certainly moving there right now. We use media servers, but we build plugins for them that enable us to do and manipulate materials and specularity and metalness and the opaqueness of certain items in the scenes, and we do it in real time. And it's one object at a time. It might be the reflection on the dashboard and like how reflective is that material, right? But we're getting to a point where it's not just the dashboard, but it's going to be the mountainscape and how much snow is there and what color is the snow and what direction is it blowing and how much turbulence is there. And like all these elements are going to be, instead of having to commit to it months in advance and render the content out in the right format, we're going to be able to show up and like just place a camera in a 3D environment and cut it up for the viewport that is the screen surface, and that's going to be the deliverable, is going to be that real-time environment. And that real-time environment is also going to be the environment that the movie's made in. I think we're 10 years out, 5 to 10 years out from being able to do that, but the technology it's very much on its way, and that's where I see what we bring to set, like that's where this is going to be. It's going to be a solution that is completely done in real time. There's not going to be any difference between the final product and what we do on set, because they're going to be literally the same thing.
Anything exciting you're working on right now?
Yeah.
That you can talk about?
Yeah, let's see. We are going back to London to finish up a sci-fi movie that we're working on right now, which will come out next May. Can't talk too much about that, but what I can talk about is got a bunch of really large broadcast work coming up. I think we're working on the Country Music Awards. We've got some work. We just finished the MTV Movie Awards the other day. These are really, like, they don't seem like they work in the film sort of application, but what we do is we take a bunch of the technology we use in the broadcast market and we adapt it to the film market. So as you're watching TV, a lot of the work that you see there is also work that we're doing in the film market and techniques we're using. We're actually doing a really cool install for Salesforce, which is this really massive Fortune 500 company, but they have their own marketing department and they have a studio. And we're building this really big LED wall in their studio so they can shoot on the LED wall, so they don't need to go on location, because they were having to go on location and do like a bunch of green screen shoots, do a bunch of car shoots, and like now they're gonna have a studio in San Francisco that's got this like, I think it's like a 40-foot long LED wall that's on a big arc. And we built this solution for them that is going to let them shoot on a bunch of reds, so they can do a normal like hosting anchor shows, but also turn it into this like green screen replacement set. So that's like a really cool application that's going to impact impacts their filmmaking and impacts their storytelling.
Awesome.
Yeah. So.
Well, that's great, Philip. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was a
really
pleasure.
Interesting. We have arrived at our destination, which is the ASC Clubhouse. I'm not sure I can go in. We are going to the party of the American Society of Cinematographers, which is exciting. And now we just have to find parking. I don't know if they have parking, but we'll find out. Thanks everybody for watching this episode of Cinema 5D on the Go. Tune in for the next show next week, and stay tuned to Cinema 5D for all things camera news and reviews. Thanks for watching.